let's talk about that ending. This Chainsaw Man ending is very polarizing. We have one side that says it's freaking fantastic. We have the other side saying it's completely trash. And so I want this video to potentially be maybe a way of insight. Because for me, I have to admit, I do side more on it being bad than good, but I can say that there is good aspects to this ending. So before I get into all the bad stuff about this ending, I do want to talk about the good. One of the first things is, simply put, Denji does ultimately have like a better life, or a life that he would want. If you really think about it, at the end of the day, Denji is a very simple guy. He has basic needs, and those basic needs in the life that he has when it comes to power, when it comes to working with Public Safety Division, and also with Naruto being over there as a head, like that in of itself is something that he would be content with. That would be the life that he would want to have. He's able to fight these devils, have decent amount of money to get some food and not eat out of a trash can and have to sell his left testicle. You know what I'm saying? Like, he don't have to do these things to just try to live, try to survive. He's not in survival mode. And ultimately, that works out in the end for him. Especially considering, if you remember what Pochita said. Pochita has said to Denji that he thrives in a struggle. He thrives living in that kind of hell. So though this is not an easy life for him, this is the life that ultimately I think he would honestly choose for himself as well. So if you look at it as a pocket for just Denji in that aspect, that's a fine ending for him. One that's also underrated that I don't think enough people give credit to is Asamitaka's ending. This is the one thing I will highlight and say that I think Fujimoto did a decent enough job with when it comes to her character. Because at first, when I first read it, I was getting upset about it. But hear me out. The thing about Asamitaka, there's a big domino effect when it comes to how her life became the way it became. With how we see this ending, though, those domino effects don't exist. What I mean by that is that their teacher, Tanaka, he's dead. And not only that he's dead, which if you remember correctly, he's kind of a problem. He was sleeping with the class president, all the while still having a crush on Asamitaka. So yeah, he kind of needed to go. So with him out of the picture, also, I think the class president might be out of the picture because of that. And with Asa not falling on Bucky at that time, because this is a parallel to chapter 97, the start of part 2, her life actually will turn around because of this moment. This whole domino effect happens when Bucky dies. Because when Bucky gets squished, the classroom pretty much turns on her. And in turn, that's the tipping point for the class president to get upset about Asamitaka. So with Bucky not dying there, and also, Bucky's more important to Asamitaka than we realize, because you look back at chapter 97 again, Bucky is the type of character that won't allow Asamitaka to sit in her shell. The reason why he was jumping up at Asa was to try to get her to be friends and befriend the classroom, basically. She's been all in her head this entire time, and while that moment was happening, she actually has an epiphany and realized she's just been jealous the entire time about everybody around her. Bucky showed her that. So there was a moment where she could potentially actually have a turnaround, but because Bucky died at the time that we saw in the beginning of part 2, her character falls down to a whole cliff instead. So what I'm trying to say is, Bucky still being alive is going to allow Asamitaka to actually progress within her life. She can make friends. She can be more confident. The things that she was saying while she was getting cut up by the Justice Devil, by the class president, like, those things can actually happen for her. Therefore, her life as a whole will 100% guarantee to be better than what she ended up ultimately having in part 2. So with all that said, because that's a lot, right? I do actually appreciate what we got with Asamitaka here. And one last little tidbit to even add to this moment here, which if you look back at this chapter, as I read it, it was kind of nice to see not only Asa say, "Thank you, Chainsaw Man," and his heart thumps, but he also has like a longing look to Asa, and there's like reassurance on his face in some cases here. Whether he knows it or not, there is some inkling of like familiarity that's there that he still has, and I guess ultimately he is happy about that. Now, I wish that maybe Fujimoto could have highlighted that a bit better for us to really kind of see this, but for what we got, it's not bad. And the last thing about this ending that does make it good is, yeah, we get to see Power again. We do get to see Naruto again, because Naruto's death really kind of like took us out for a minute there. I'm not gonna lie, because I was hoping that this girl was still alive this entire time. If you watch my reactions, I kept sitting like, nah, she ain't dead. Like he ended up messing up and not freaking putting them all on the face. Like, look. I know I made a mistake there, okay? I made a mistake, but I was trying, okay? But it's nice to kind of see these characters again and see how the structure of what they have now could potentially be better for what Denji is as a whole. So again, with all that said, this is like within a pocket, right? If you just look at it from this viewpoint, you can enjoy this ending. Now, if you actually start digging deeper, this is where the problems are coming in. We can go back to Denji, actually, funny enough, right? See, the thing here is, in a pocket, this ending is fine enough, but like, this doesn't really address like the growth of his character. In a lot of ways, you can kind of view this as another regression of his character. I wanted to make a video on Denji as a character because I thought I understood him, especially with all the essay that was going on with his character, and I thought at one point within this series, he would actually not necessarily have an epiphany moment, but have an understanding that these things that are happening to you, they're wrong, and maybe you should want out of this, or you should have more agency about controlling that for yourself, right? We don't get any of that, unfortunately. And the other problem with it is obviously his decision-making skills. Like, we just never see him actually choose left or right. Like, he never actually makes a choice. He always does this middle ground thing all the time. Now, granted, funny enough, he has made a choice at least one time. There was a major choice, which was taking out Makima. And that's what made me think that his character growth will happen in part 2, because after part 1, he understood that even though he still loved Makima, he would have at least known to understand that you have to make sacrifices for the greater good. And like I said, you could sidestep quite a bit of that, but I think when it comes to the choice here, I feel like that was like the major thing that I feel like everybody's having a problem with, is the fact that at the end of the day, Denji should have had agency for himself. And you can even say the same thing for Asamitaka. As much as I was praising that ending for her, even her character, before all this like reversion happened, even her character needed to have more agency about the choices that she's even making. Because halfway through the story, she kind of loses herself and she goes to the wayside. And it's kind of crazy to do that, given that this character, Asamitaka, was built very heavily in the beginning of part 2. So much so, people rejected her as a main character. People did not like her in the beginning. I don't know what people feel about her now, but like, they hated her character. And the thing is, if you have that feeling of like Denji not making that choice, or at least having that agency to make the choice, I understand that's a valid reason to have a problem with this ending, because he needed to actually do this and even do a parallel to how part 1 ended. This could easily just parallel part 1 to part 2, because part 2 parallels so much stuff from part 1 already. So if we were to end in a similar fashion, or in a fashion where Denji does ultimately make that choice with Puchita to revert back to a certain time frame, that's fine. There's no problem with that. I think more people would accept that ending just by just doing that. Everything else literally could be the same, but that one thing would actually, I think, at least make it more digestible for the greater audience here. So that's one of the major issues I feel like the ending actually has here, but there's still like a lot of other unanswered things, because like, again, the ending in of itself, if you look at it as a pocket and don't think too much about it, it's fine enough, but there's so many unanswered questions, and all part 2's kind of been that way this entire time. If you really start thinking about it, it's like, why didn't we answer any of these questions? It's very weird. Like, one thing I actually brought up, which is the Fire Devil, it goes back to the whole decision making for Denji, which again, that's why it kind of like becomes an issue, because again, part 2 has always been about Denji making a choice. It literally starts off like that in a way. When we finally see Denji has to make a choice, either like, what was it, like to save the people in a car or something like that, or to save that one individual or something along those lines, right? He had to make a choice. That devil made that happen, and then he decides to save the cat, right? Remember that? Like, he always tries to find some other third option. So this theme of Denji making a choice needed to be resolved, which then if you resolve that resolves the Fire Devil situation, because the Fire Devil is just ultimately just trying to get Denji to make a choice. And the Fire Devil in of itself is just kind of weird, because he was just a devil, come to find out it's Fire Devil, but then there's no payoff at all. Like, we don't know what the heck even happened. The character literally disappears, and then that was it. Now, granted, yes, he was under the control of Death Devil, but even then, it's like, that's still, again, an overarching theme of the entirety of part 2 that you can't just gloss over. Another weird thing about this ending, actually, funny enough, is Nayuta. As much as I love seeing Nayuta back, I am still kind of confused, and this is just one of those things, again, where it's like, I feel like he put it there just for the sake of being there, but at the same time, you kind of need to explain a little bit like what's really going on here, because is the gun devil here? Because she does the bang thing. Like, so do guns exist? And does that mean gun devil's around? Like, when it comes to Nayuta's like existence, actually, you really think about it, there's more questions now than things are answered. Because Nayuta even being there by itself, being, I guess I'm assuming, the head of public safety division, it's like, but why? If you remember correctly, Kishibe has said this to Denji, that if left in the hands of public safety, she would just become Makima 2.0. So what's the difference between this public safety divisions, or these people that actually are, you know, helping her in a way, quote unquote, helping her? Like, what is the difference here than it was before? Because what I can tell, like, I mean, the government's still trash. Just because Puchita ate himself and revert things, that doesn't necessarily, like, negate some of the awful things that happen in the world outside of him. Like, Puchita isn't the end-all be-all for everything that goes wrong within the series. And so Nayuta being there, it only brings up, like, more questions, and it's kind of weird that she's even, like, there to begin with. Especially considering that she's also a powerful devil. She's one of the 4 horsewomen. Because we're also under the impression that none of the other horsewomen should be here, given that, you know, there's no reason for it because, you know, there's no Chainsaw Man. And I want to just say the last major thing that I honestly have a problem with this ending is just Puchita's power. I'm just very confused on, like, how this man's power actually works. What the heck is he? Like, the fact that this show throughout its entirety doesn't actually explain what the heck Puchita actually is very weird, because it's been hinted that he might be more than just a chainsaw devil. And the thing is, I know the theory about the whole womb situation with chainsaws back in the day. I understand that theory, but that's a theory. There's nothing that's factual here, which goes into the problem of what's going on with his abilities. Because it was understood when it comes to Puchita, if you were to eat a devil whole, that concept of whatever that devil was is gone. That concept is completely gone, wiped out. Now, the thing here is it doesn't revert time, because we see this multiple occasions, like the ear devil, for instance. Eat the ear devil, there's no ears, but headphones still exist. It doesn't erase the things that are already pre-existing in the world. So for it to be this type of, like, time jump type of ability all of a sudden to revert back time, it's very odd. I know Puchita is a catalyst for a lot of different things that go on in the world, but I don't know why that would give him the capabilities to take all that away like that, though, because his powers never hinted to do something along those lines, unless I missed something. But from what I've seen and how I read this, it was never hinted that this guy could do all of this. And that brings up this, like, big issue I honestly just been having with the series as a whole. Ever since I've been reading it, I've been having this issue with the series. We understand the basis of, like, how devils work, how the power system work, right? But they never dive deeper into people's individual abilities. So when we started seeing more of Puchita's abilities and being able to erase like concepts and all that, like, there should have been some hinting that it can go further beyond that. But we don't see that. And also when it comes to, like, the power scaling within Chainsaw Man, it can be kind of hard to know what is actually strong here. Because I make an argument, and I don't know if anyone else really sees this, but, like, the Death Devil was hyped up. We all hyped her up, okay? We did this. But I have to admit, she doesn't seem to be that strong. But that also could be just how the world works, right? Because if you look at this last chapter, for instance, Hanukkah died right there. Students still playing soccer, don't give a goddamn. So that kind of tells you that their viewpoint on death is not the same as, like, how our world works, right? Like, we can't use our real world, like, elements of what we think is bad that would signify how strong a devil actually is. And there is a bit of a loophole when it comes to the strength of devils, seeing as if the devils eat other devils, therefore they can gain strength by doing so. So I feel like I understand the system here, but it's still kind of hard to tell because the world building within Chainsaw Man just really isn't that great. And I feel like Fujimoto could have took more time really laying down the better foundations for the power system here, in my honest opinion. And we should have saw hell, god dang it. Freaking, man, don't get me started on that. So yeah, those I think are the major issues I feel like a lot of people are having with this ending, and they're all valid issues to why you would not like the ending of Chainsaw Man. For me, like I said, I don't particularly care for this ending that much. How I honestly would fix it, but it's simple fixes. These are simple fixes. The chapter could be exactly the same thing, just slight changes to what we have at the end here. How I honestly fix it is just simply by having Denji make the decision with Puchita. If you did that, like I said, it rectifies the whole Fire Devil situation. It shows agency for Denji to want to actually just let that go, similar to how he had to let go of Makima. He now has to let go of Puchita to ultimately live the life that he needs to live, because he finally learned that lesson to be able to make a decision. It also highlights that he can finally move past his addiction and become a better person, because how this ends, it's like those elements of his addiction can still come by. Like these elements of his character are still there. He's still a horn dog. He's still somebody that can't make decisions. So like, this doesn't change anything in the sense of that he's still gonna have problems regardless of how much you revert this, because as a character he never grew out of that. So I just fix it by simply making him make that decision. When it comes to Asumitaka, unfortunately, like I said, for what we got, I'd take what we got. Like, it's not bad. I still feel like Aki still is needed in the dynamics of like the family nature that Power and Denji have. So I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't mind seeing Aki there, but at the same time I also understand why Aki kind of can't be there. But we save this, but at the same time we also have Nayuta, which you know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna put Nayuta there, I mean, look, put family, all right? Family, god dang it. Especially considering that hopefully like Nayuta's not like living, which I doubt she is, because she was not necessarily a good influence on Denji if you really think about it, because he was tied down because of her. Like, he can't even date people because of Nayuta. So like, I'm kind of glad that I don't think they're like in that kind of dynamic zone with that. So, let's keep it that way, all right? So simply, I think just doing those things would rectify at least some parts of the ending. These are simple fixes, easily could have been done in like 2.2 seconds, but this is what we got. Unless there's a part 3, which I doubt there's gonna be a part 3. Even with part 3, I don't know how much they can honestly fix. Because like I said, there's still so many unanswered questions in Chainsaw Man. Like, what is Konobi's freaking contract? Like, I still want to know like who she contracted with exactly, right? I want to know. Kind of sucks that like a lot of the payoffs for like Asumitaka's character doesn't really get resolved, or even I mean, I know Yoshida's dead, but I wish like there's so many theories about Yoshida, right? I kind of wish there was more with his character, because he was kind of interesting, but I feel like they never, like, none of the characters in part 2 really cooked like that. Like in part 1. Part 1, the characters are more beloved and more memorable because they just had more agency within the story, whereas a lot of the characters in part 2, and like, who are we really liking here outside of maybe Asumitaka, right? Like, this, like, the characters really fail to leave a stronger mark, and that's partly because of just how things end up for all these characters. None of them really have any of their plot points resolved, unfortunately. For what we got, like I said, how we fix it is that, but I want to know, what are your guys' thoughts on this last chapter of Chainsaw Man? I have thought about this a lot. Like I said, like, if I had to give it a rating, so I didn't give it a rating in the live reaction I had, I'd probably give this final chapter maybe like a 5 out of 10, 4 or 5 out of 10, honestly, simply because like it's a good middle ground. Like my rating is from 1 to 10. 5 is literally average, and I feel like that's why I say maybe a 4, because it's slightly below average, because I feel like there's too many unanswered things within the series that really needed to really be adjusted. And like I said, Denji as a character needed this moment for him to make his own decision. Like, he needed that to happen. So for that to not happen for him, for Asa to be kind of shattered in her character, I have to admit, it really wasn't that great of an ending. It's not the worst. Well, I'd like to know what you guys' thoughts are on this final chapter of Chainsaw Man. Do y'all think part 3 is potentially happening, or do you think a different ending could potentially happen? Like, what would your perfect ending be, actually? I'm kind of curious, like, what your guys' thoughts are on this. I want to know. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be talking about more, not necessarily Chainsaw Man, but more anime discussions and things of that nature. So if you like this discussion, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because we got more to talk about. But I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, people, break out.